Welcome to Keep Your Thriving Alive. I'm Mark Mulligan, and this is the space where I share inspiration, tips and ideas to boost your mood, your energy and your well-being. Whenever I run Thriving workshops, one question comes up more than any other. How do I even begin to have a conversation with somebody where I'm concerned about their well-being? To explore this question and how to help those around you to manage their stress and thrive, I'm delighted to have my ex-business partner, mentor and good friend Daryll Scott here. Daryll is an author, keynote speaker, consultant and the best coach that I know. People come to him with anxiety, depression, fear, anger, stress, phobia and even physical pain, and he sets them free. He has an understanding of the dynamics of how we communicate as human beings and how to turn good intentions into action to have the impact that you want in the world. Welcome, Daryll. This is such a big topic, and every time I run a workshop, it comes up. People want to have more holistic well-being conversations. But from your perspective, why is this something that's more important today than it's ever been?
Because we get by with a little help from our friends. And I think that mental health is a big issue at the moment. It's in every conversation I bump into, which is great for awareness, and it's great for people knowing they're not alone and knowing what to do about things. But sometimes it can lead us to be a little fearful or reticent to have a conversation, especially if they have a label that we think is scary.
And how does that manifest itself, that with it becoming a thing? How does that impact somebody who might be thinking about reaching out and just being an ordinary human being and helping somebody else?
Well, I think it makes them not ordinary. It's a bit like when someone points a camera at you and suddenly your normal relaxed behavior changes somehow and you become stilted, or you become over concerned or self-conscious. And I think it's the same kind of thing. If there's some degree of fear in the background or concern about the conversation you're having, then obviously you're going to start to behave a little strangely, which is not ideal considering the nature of the conversation that you want to have.
When we were discussing this video, I was thinking what would be most useful for people watching? And I thought that if we could approach it in terms of what are the small changes that we could make in terms of how we think, in terms of how we feel, or in terms of how it is that we behave, what would be most helpful to people? So, starting off with how we think, I guess there's two ways that we could approach this. It's, what are the thought patterns that are actually stopping us reaching out and having that conversation? And then what would be the resourceful thought patterns or mindsets to have? In other words, what is it that we need to stop thinking and what is it that we would need to start thinking so that we can have a better conversation?
Yeah, I mean, there's so much stuff that could get in the way.
Yeah, like what sort of things?
Well, I mean, you could be fearful of a label or a condition and think that you're ill-equipped to have a conversation about it.
They might be fearful that they're going to make it worse.
You could be concerned about the conversation itself. You may think you may not be able to take it wherever it goes.
Or maybe you don't have the time. You think, well, actually, this is take a reasonable amount of time to do properly, and I'm just so rammed at the moment, I can't find the time to do it.
You may be concerned about upsetting them or raising it and then becoming, ending up in floods of tears or something.
They might be fearful that they're going to expose or embarrass the person.
You may not even care.
You may not even care. I was running a session a few months ago and there was an individual in the room who said something that really shocked me. He said, I'm empathetic, I'm just not sympathetic. It's not that I don't see that people are stressed, it's that I just don't care. And it was really interesting for me because I wasn't so surprised that people think this. What I was flabbergasted by was that he would share it amongst his peers.
You're mildly honest. And I think if you don't care, it will be fairly harmful to force yourself into a conversation where you have to pretend that you do.
Now, luckily in my experience, that tends to be the exception. For most people, what they want is to reach out and they want to help their colleagues. So, Daryll, those are a lot of thoughts that can get in the way of us actually having the conversation, kicking it off in the first place. What would be 2 or 3 resourceful mindsets that would help?
Well, initially just listen. I think it's really much more about listening than fixing.
Maybe a second useful mindset would be this realization that this happens to us all. Like Mind, the mental health charity, have published some lifetime statistics, and they now believe that in somebody's lifetime, there's an 85% probability that they will suffer some mental health issue. And I think when it comes to stress, it's even worse. It's closer to 100%. So rather than being the exception, I think it's the rule.
Yeah. I sometimes think the label mental health is unhelpful because the opposite of health is illness. Whereas if we think about it like mental fitness, it's much more helpful because we all can easily become a little bit unfit sometimes and get our fitness back.
And what would be a third useful mindset to develop?
Well, I think it's important to have a realistic and healthy perspective on your responsibility in this. You didn't cause the problem, and the chances are you're not going to be able to fix it. Yeah. And you're also very unlikely to be able to make it any worse. So having that sort of healthy barometer of what helping is in this context, which is being there, maybe making a tiny incremental change, maybe just being aware, maybe just listening, but not taking responsibility to suddenly become someone's therapist.
Absolutely. So I guess if we moved on to the emotions and how it is that we might feel, for me, the thing that gets in the way in terms of our emotions is that we're either fearful or there's a sense of discomfort. It's almost like we're caught in a revolving door. We're fearful to push forward and do something in case it has a negative impact, but we're also afraid of doing nothing in case that we could have helped. So I was thinking, what would be a more helpful emotion to be experiencing? And I was thinking about this combination of being compassionate and being curious. And the compassionate, opening you up to the other person and wondering how it is that you might be able to help them. But also the curiosity about being open to what might actually present itself in the moment. So not making any judgments, not making any assumptions, but just really listening and responding to what it is that's coming from the other individual.
Absolutely. And curiosity is a state that doesn't really allow you to be fearful or self-conscious because you're putting your attention on the other person. It's tremendously helpful.
So this might seem a little bit conceptual for people watching in terms of thinking about how it is that you might think and how it is that you might feel, but what might we actually do in practice? What would be top tips of how it is that we might behave so that we have a more productive, constructive and impactful well-being conversation?
Well, I think obviously the first step is making yourself available, which could be tricky or feel tricky. But it's really just about reaching out and letting someone know that you're there and that you are prepared to have a chat if they want to. And
it doesn't have to be in person. It can be via email or it can be by text.
It really is just about being able to listen. And you may find in that conversation there's one or two tiny things that you can make a difference to or help with, or you may not. But either way, it's just listening is the number one currency of a good interaction.
Yeah, it's like that book by Stephen Covey, The 7 Habits of Highly Successful People, where he says, seek first to understand. So really listen to them. And I think also when you're feeding back to them what it is that you've heard, use their language. Let them know that you've really heard them.
I think with regard to listening, it's interesting. Most conversations are like a game of tennis. One person says something, the other person says something. And if you create an opportunity for people to speak in a way that's more helpful for them, it's odd because the point where normally you would respond or ask another question, maybe you don't, maybe you pause and or maybe you just listen, and it seems a little weird, but it's massively helpful for people to get things off their chest.
So what else could you do?
Well, I think empower them, which comes back a bit to, take it, how much you take responsibility, but really asking them about what would help them or what they could do. And by all means, you can make small gestures or create things that can contextually support them. But really, if you try to own the solution for them, that's not really very helpful. So it's about certainly listening, being there, and then empowering them by helping them come up with an answer that's going to work for them.
And finally, I think in some instances, it will be right to refer them. If you think that that person's either a risk to themselves or to somebody else, then the appropriate thing to do is to refer them to somebody who's professionally equipped to support them. Most organizations have employee assistance programs and you can point them in that direction. And if that's not the case, there's an amazing website which is called befrienders.org, and that's got a list of organizations across the globe who are open and you can actually have a conversation with them. So somebody on the other end of a line will be able to give you human-to-human support.
Sure.
Daryll, thank you so much. I found that really useful and I'm sure everybody watching will find it equally useful. If anybody wants to connect with Daryll directly, either for keynote speaking, for therapy or for coaching, you can contact him via his website, which is daryllscott.com. So I hope it's been useful to think about how it is you can easily change how you think, feel and behave so that you can be more comfortable and confident to reach out and help those most in need that you work with. The key takeaways from this video are: how is it that you can make small changes around your mindset? Develop a mindset that listening is more important than fixing. Remember that stress affects all of us, so it's the norm rather than the exception. And it's not your responsibility, and you would like to help. Small changes around how you feel, emotion. Develop a compassionate curiosity. It's difficult to be fearful or uncomfortable if you're genuinely being curious about the other person. How might you change how you behave? Well, make yourself available and show that you care. Really listen to the person. Empower them to work out what it is that they need, or in some cases, refer them if they need professional help. There's something that happens when you reach out and help somebody else that might also help you. I think it was Churchill who said that we make a living by what we get, but we make a life by what we give. I hope it's been useful to reflect on how you can reach out more to your colleagues, friends, or even family in a way that you feel comfortable and confident and help them to overcome stress and thrive more of the time. Now, I'd love to hear from you. What's been the most useful thing about this video and what action are you going to take? Please leave your comments in the section below. I look forward to seeing you next month, and in the meantime, be well and thrive.